Hey friends, thanks for tuning in. I titled this video Broke Meals because I've got some meals that can be made for between $2 and $3, and that's the cost for the total ingredients, so per serving is much less. I'm going to be making 2 meals out of this large can of crushed tomatoes. I picked this up from Walmart for $1.67. You can purchase the Great Value brown spaghetti at Walmart for only $1.18, and there are different varieties of spaghetti there, whether you like the thin spaghetti, the half spaghetti, all kinds of options these days, but Barilla is my favorite spaghetti, and I already had it in my house, so I'm just going to go ahead and use that today. And I'm also going to be using 1 clove of garlic, but obviously if you want to just use garlic powder, that's going to be perfectly fine. In fact, more often than not, that's how I'm making mine. And I did decide to add an additional clove of garlic because I do like a heavy garlic flavor. And like I said, I'm only going to be using half of these crushed tomatoes in this dish. So I'll save the other for the second dish that I'm going to be showing you. And you've seen me make a marinara before, but usually I do like to use a can of tomato sauce. I only cook for myself. And I find that it's the least expensive way to make a really good marinara because I can get a can of the tomato sauce for 53 cents and it's enough for me. But one of my viewers was telling me that she spent a great deal of time in Italy and they make marinara from passata, which is a tomato puree that has been strained of all the skins and tomato seeds. Probably the closest thing to that in our markets is the crushed tomatoes with tomato puree. And I myself think that I'll really enjoy the little pieces of tomato in there because I do love tomatoes. This has simmered for a while now and it is delicious. I am going to add a little bit more oil to this mix and then I'm going to combine the spaghetti with the pasta sauce. Sometimes I just put the sauce on the top, which is usually my preferred way to do it, but this time I'm going to go ahead and put the spaghetti in together with that because I know a lot of my viewers like to have a nicely coated spaghetti noodle. So I had already cooked my spaghetti noodles in some heavily salted water until they were al dente, and then I'm just going to heat them back up in the pan with the sauce. I picked up these parsley flakes at Walmart because they were on sale. They were just over $1, but they are so bright green. You can't really see as good on camera, but they're just very bright. And I do love having something bright green to garnish the plate with. I'm not sure what's going on with the lighting in this picture, but regardless, this spaghetti was delicious and I would definitely make this again. And you could always customize this by adding in some meatballs or some single ingredient vegetables like zucchini or mushrooms. I did have some leftover marinara and I also had some zucchini, so I thought I would try something that I remember one of my viewers told me a long time ago, and she said that she added her zucchini to the air fryer along with just some oil and some dried herbs. And so I thought I would try that today. And I'm just using some basil and some Italian seasoning and a little bit of garlic salt. And if garlic salt is all you have, then that's going to be just fine. But I'm just using whatever I have in the pantry that I think will be good. And then I did decide to pull out half of these because I do actually have some breadcrumbs in my pantry. So I thought I would try half of these with those and see how those turn out. Normally when you're making crispy zucchini, you put it in an egg wash first and then into the breadcrumbs. And then I just added these to my air fryer. You can also just put these in the toaster oven. Either is going to work just fine. I've made zucchini so many different ways and I always love it. And this is delicious. I can see why my viewer said that she loved it just like this. Obviously it's not crispy, but it's not really meant to be. It's just you have that delicious flavor of the zucchini. And I'm going to try the one with the breadcrumbs. And that was delicious too. It wasn't crispy. I honestly think I like the one without the breadcrumbs better. It's so simple to make roasted zucchini with herbs, but it's surprisingly delicious. And for my second meal, I'm going to be using the other half of this can of crushed tomatoes, which is about 83 cents. And then I'm going to use a half of a cup of red lentils, which is, gosh, probably about 30 cents, but usually I can get these for 99 cents a pound. If you don't have access to inexpensive red lentils, then you can certainly just use green lentils here. I have 2 small cloves of chopped garlic and about a 1/4 cup of chopped onions. I'm putting a 1/2 teaspoon of turmeric. It's not going to add any flavor really. It's just going to add some color, but I do like to use that in most of my food just for the health benefits, and I do enjoy the color, but if you don't have it, it's not going to change anything. And then I brought this up to a boil, and then I decided to let this cook for a few minutes before I add in the tomatoes. Red lentils only take about 10 minutes to cook, so they are definitely a great option if you're wanting to get dinner on the table quickly. And they're full of protein and other good nutrients. I can't imagine a recipe being easier than this one. And I did add a little bit of water to my tomato sauce can just to get all of the goodness out of there. And if you add too much water to the dish, then don't worry, you can just boil it a little longer to reduce the water. And then I did add a small amount of additional garlic powder and black pepper. Another one of my viewers likes to have ginger in the same soup, and I think I would really love that as well. Probably going to play around with this recipe a little bit. Okay, another one of my viewers had told me about using nooch for some garlic toast. As many of you know, I am a super big cheese lover, but I just can't eat it anymore. So I'm always looking for these options. And I do love garlic toast with just a little oil and garlic salt. So if that's all you have, it's going to make a delicious garlic toast. But I thought now would be a really great time to try making this kind of garlic toast, because I do know that I have some viewers that are in the same situation. So I just put that into the toaster oven, and my soup is almost ready, but for my last ingredient, I decided to add the salt. I wanted to wait a while just to see how much I would need to add, because the can of tomatoes does have salt already in them, but I added enough just to my liking, and then I plated it, and I did drizzle it with a little oil and topped it with the parsley. And the first set of garlic toast that I made, I cooked it a little too long, but it was still delicious. And I would definitely make this kind of garlic toast again. I still like the taste of Parmesan toast better, but this comes in at a close second. It's got the same umami flavor that Parmesan cheese has. Like I said, I would make this again, and making garlic toast is one of my favorite ways to use up some stale bread. And this soup was excellent. It's like a healthy version of a tomato soup, but I also love the way you have the bits of onion in there. Obviously, you could puree this if you wanted to, but I do prefer the pieces of lentil and tomatoes and onions in this. This was really good, and my son said this was excellent also, which is a huge compliment coming from him. And I did forget to show that I added some garlic salt to the bread earlier, but I did make some more garlic bread because it was so delicious. And this was my second bowl of the soup, which I didn't have quite a full bowl, but I wanted to show how I made this, and this is actually the way it should look when it's not overcooked. Anyway, this was delicious. Next time I'm going to add in some ginger and then also fold in some spinach. I think that'd be really good. You could even add some potatoes to this if you wanted to. I think fall is my favorite time of the year. When the temperatures cool down, I'm back to making my favorite soups, and I've been craving one in particular. But first, I have to show you this. I asked my son to pick me up some ginger, and this is what he bought me. Look at how huge this is. I don't think I've ever seen one quite this big. But I love ginger in my soups, so I'm sure this will get eaten, and I probably won't need to freeze any of it. So to start out with, I've chopped up some ginger and garlic, which I've already added to some water. Then I'm adding about a half teaspoon of turmeric, and I'm only making 2 serving sizes here. I also added about a half of a teaspoon of salt, but you might want to add more or less to your liking. And then I've got some cabbage that is getting a little bit old, and so I'm just going to throw that into the soup. But I do love cabbage in my soup, so it's one of my favorite ingredients actually. And then I'm adding some black pepper. And this is very similar to a soup that you've probably seen me make last winter. But here I'm just using some leftover ingredients that I have, like the zucchini. I also cut up a potato. The potato tends to make the soup more filling for me. So it's nice to have something in there that kind of sticks with you. And I find that potatoes do that for me. And then I'm also adding a little bit of the chickpeas in the can that I took to make my wraps last week with. I've made the most delicious meals out of that can, that single can of chickpeas. And I decided to add a little bit more water here. So I've cut up some spinach and also a few carrots. I tend to like to add my carrots towards the end of cooking because I don't like them super soft. And it does kind of look like I added most of the ingredients together at once here, but I actually added them at separate times in the cooking process. Obviously you can add other seasonings too, but I do just like to keep this one simple because this is my favorite way to eat it. And I usually just add the spinach at the end, and then I add it to my lunchbox, and it ends up cooking in the broth because I do like it to have kind of this green color when I'm eating it, but it will darken a little bit, but it really just needs to sit in there for a minute. This soup is delicious with just the garlic, ginger, and salt and pepper. That really is all you need. And then you've seen me eat these plant-based meatballs before. I prefer these over regular meatballs, but obviously if you want to use meatballs, you can. And I just put these in the toaster oven for about 15 minutes. It gives them this beautiful brown color and improves the texture a bit. And then I throw them into the soup. Because they're kind of dry anyway, when you add them to a soup, it makes them so juicy and they absorb all of that delicious broth. And they've become my favorite way to eat those. And it's nice to keep them in the freezer just to have on hand to pull a couple out to throw into the soups. So this is a good time for a reminder for you to kind of stock up on meatballs and some of these soup ingredients, because if it's not soup season where you live, it's probably going to be very soon. And it does look like I overfilled this, so I'm gonna have to drink some of this broth out of here. This is so delicious, so savory, and so good. You know, a hot soup just feels like a hug to me. I mean, there's nothing more comforting than soup, and the fact that you can make it with most any ingredients, and you don't even have to be a good cook to make a good soup. You really just have to know the basics of those initial seasonings that you enjoy. Maybe for you that's chicken broth. Have you guys ever tried these Lara bars? They've been around for a while now, but I had never tried these. So when I was at the store, I spotted them and they looked like they had some great ingredients, just all natural items, just a few ingredients. And so I picked up a few of these to try. I like to have some things at the office just for those long stretches when I might get hungry. I can just grab to have a quick snack. And I also picked up this cherry one, and I wasn't sure how I was going to like this one, but it turned out to be my favorite. It was a little bit tart, but sweet also. I can't really explain it. You'll just have to try it. It was really good along with some black coffee. And then I was just going to show you, I took one of these rolls along to dip in my soup. I've had these in there for about 4 months, but it actually turns out to where, you know what, they're perfect for the soup. Even though they're a little bit stale, they just work so good along with it. I just kind of dip them in the soup. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this week's video. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you Sunday.
Morning has broken, my windows are open. Wanna feel the wind blow through my hair. Which way do I follow? What happens tomorrow?